Okay, here's a continuation of the shipping cost one. So remember the x-axis goes this way. So when x is 45, that is a vertical line. So I'm going to go vertically and basically x equals 45. Okay. Y would be, the y-axis goes up and down. So y is stuck at 32. So that's going to be horizontal. So y equals 32. Now, 0 is not greater than 45. And 0 is not greater than 32. So right now, if I go towards 0, this is all no's, right? Like no, none of that, because we're over here. And then 0 is on this side of that line. Those are all no's as well, because it's not towards 0 for either one. So I know I'm up in that area, okay? So I'm going to kind of remake my graph here. So I'm going to pause it because right now I'm like, oh, this is not looking too great. I need more space, right? To kind of get to where I'm going. So I'm going to pause a second and redraw. All right, because we kind of have some big numbers, I went ahead and went by tens on my graph, and I used a ruler to make things a little prettier here. So again, when the x-axis goes this way, but if x is stuck at 45, it's vertical. Y-axis goes this way. If y is stuck at 32, it's horizontal. 0 and 0 do not work for either one. So I'm up in this corner to the right of, and right and upper corner of those two lines. All right, let's graph this one. If you sub in 0, you get 120. If you sub in 0 for y, you get 120. So you're going to have a y-intercept of 120 and an x-intercept of 120. So I'm going to put both of those there. Okay, and I'm going to, again, use a ruler or some type of straight edge to draw that. And again, I'm not using graph paper, so this one's not perfect, but, and these are all solid lines because less than or equal to. All right, again, test 0, 0. So is 0 plus 0 less than or equal to 120? Yes, it is. So 0, 0 is a yes this time. So when I'm looking at this line, I'm going towards 0, 0, yes. So I am now in here. So I did have what I would call A and B, kind of like when you get your eyes checked. Is it A or B or 1 or 2, right? Which one looks better? So we cut that corner into two pieces with this line. And I'm going to label that line because sometimes it's nice on decimals to know what lines you're talking about. All right, so I know I'm in this little triangle here. So B is a no now. We're not there. We're in none of these. We're in this little triangle right here in the middle. All right, our next one is 20x plus 15y equals 1500. So if I sub in 0 for x, I divide by 15, I get 100. If I sub in 0 for y, I'm dividing by 20. And again, if you can do that mentally, great. If not, use a calculator. 75. Doesn't matter to me. So 100 on the y. That's your y-intercept. And then what? 75 on the x. And again, I'm going to use that straight edge. And it looks like it just nips off a little corner there. So what is that? That was the 20x plus 15y equals 1500. Okay, I'm going to test 0, 0. Is 0 plus 0 greater than 1500? No. So we're not going to go towards 0, 0 because that's not an answer. We're going to go away. So this little baby b in the corner of that little triangle that we cut off is not the answer. We're going to go up here. So it looks like my shaded region is right there. So it's kind of like a triangle with a little edge cut off. All right, now, if you want to use Desmos to help you, let me just pull up Desmos quick so you can kind of see where am I at. All right, I graph these all as lines. So if you don't know where a corner point is, because your graph isn't ideal enough, this is 5132. So I'm going to label that one 5132. This one is part of my shaded region. That's what, 4540. This one up here is that 40? Well, come on, Julie. Let me get on it. 4575. And this one over here is what, 8832. All right, now let me shade these just so you can see you know, this can get kind of ugly fast. Okay, these have to be positive. So again, if you use the shading tool, it can get kind of ugly. Let's see, this one is, what was that one? That was greater than or equal to. This one is less than or equal to. This one was what? Greater than or equal to, is that right? Yeah. And the top one. All right. So when you look at this, it's kind of hard to tell that the region you're in is right here. So here, here, that corner, and there. So that's why sometimes I don't like to graph it on Desmos. I graph it by hand, but I might use Desmos to help me get some of those corner points, right? If I need to. Another thing that you can do, let's go back, is if you don't know where two lines cross, for example, this is crossing 32. So I could sub 32 into this equation for y and solve for the x. I could sub 32 into this equation and solve for the x to get there. Here, I know x is 45, so I could sub an x 45 into this equation to get the y value. So there are ways of doing that. All right. So then what you would do next is you would make a chart. Z equals 30x plus 40y. And again, your corner points are only touching the shading. So there's this one, that one, and that one. So you only have 4 of them, 45, 75, 45, 40, 51, 32, I believe, and 88, 32. And you would make your chart with those 4 points, sub them all in to 30x plus 40y. You're looking for what here? You are looking to minimize shipping costs. So whichever one gives the minimum, and you would say, okay, we should do so much from plant 1, so much from plant 2, and we're going to minimize shipping costs at whatever dollar amount. That's how you'd answer it. All right, I want to spend time setting up another one here. So I'm going to pause for a second. We'll look at the next one. All right, this problem is page 142, number 4, and we're talking about refrigerators. All right. So again, remember, get your Z out of the problem first, okay, so that you don't think those numbers are something else. So what does it say? Read the end of the story. How many refrigerators should be shipped to each warehouse to minimize cost? Okay, so we're minimizing cost. So look for anything that talks about cost. So I'm going to read the problem and let's see. And it says to minimize cost. Okay, It costs $12 to ship to warehouse A, $10 to ship to warehouse B. All right, so we want to minimize that cost. So Z is what? 12x plus 10y. The $12 goes with warehouse A. So warehouse A, I'm going to write that right underneath the 12x. And then it costs $10 to ship to warehouse B. So under the 10y, I'm going to put warehouse B. So those are the nouns that go on the top. Again, a lot of times these are like total alone, the first thing alone, the second thing alone, together, and value. Now, sometimes it's one thing alone and like 2 things together and 2 values, something like that. I mean, it's kind of a variation of this, but this tends to be a pattern. All right, so don't use the 10 and the 12 ever again. Those are the Z. You don't graph them. You don't use them until you get to the chart. All right, so let's look about, does it talk about the first one alone? Let's see, a manufacturer of refrigerators must ship at least 100 refrigerators to 2. Okay, so that's together. So let's go down to the together line, X plus Y. They have to ship at least 100. So X plus Y is greater than 100. They can ship more if they can. That's great. All right, each warehouse holds a maximum of 100. Now, that's talking about each of them alone. So I'm going to write X can hold at least, or no, at most. What does it say here? Each warehouse holds a maximum of 100. So I can't go over. So X is less than or equal to 100. That's that warehouse by itself. And then Y is less than or equal to 100. That's that warehouse by itself. But there's actually a little glitch here. Then it says warehouse A already has 25 refrigerators in it. So it doesn't really have space for 100. If it already has 25 in, it only has space for 75 or less. So you're going to cross off the 100. You're going to have X is less than or equal to 75. The other warehouse, warehouse B, already has 20 on hand. So it can't take 100 either. That would only be if it's empty. So you're going to change that 100 to 80. So you're going to have Y is less than or equal to 80. And then we did the together one already. X plus Y is greater than 100 or equal to 100. Now the value, where does it talk? And again, don't look at that 12 and 10. That deals with shipping. We're done with those numbers. Okay, our value is not money this time. It says A requires 4 workers and B requires 2 workers. So I'm going to have 4X plus 2Y. And what does it tell me about the workers? Union rules require that at least 300 workers be hired. So at least means I would like equal to 300 or I'm okay with more. All right. These are all called, the Z part is called the objective functions. These inequalities are called constraints. Do not forget the ones that shall never be forgotten. X has to be greater than or equal to 0. Y has to be greater than or equal to 0 because you cannot have negative things, negative objects. Okay. After you set up your story problem, the next step is to graph it. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and use real graph paper. All right. Now, before you make your graph paper, it's a good idea to make your chart. I have 75 and 80 here. If I sub in zeros to the 100 one, I get 0, 100, 100, 0 for my 2 points. If I sub in zeros for the last one, 0 for 4, 3 or 4x, sub in a 0, you get 300 divided by 2 is 150. And if I sub in 0 for y, 300 divided by 4 would be what? 75. All right. So when I look at all these, I have all 5s, you know. So I think on my graph paper, I'm going to try to go by 5s and see how that looks. All right. I'm going to pause and I'm going to set up my graph paper and then we'll try to go from there. Okay. So I went ahead and made my grid go by 5s. I only labeled the 10s, but 10, 20, but every half is a 5. All right. So we're in quadrant 1, so we know we're greater than 0 on both of those. Here it's saying X is less than 75. The X-axis goes this way, so it's a vertical line stuck at 75. And I went ahead at 75 and drew that. This one is Y, so the Y-axis goes up and down, but this is saying Y is stuck at 80. So again, at my 80, I drew that. Now, 0, 0. Is 0 less than that? Is 0 less than that? Yes. So do you get right now, both these lines tell me that I'm in this square, kind of a rectangle-y shape that is in quadrant 1 right here. Okay, what do the other two say? I'm going to graph it 100 on the Y, 100 on the X. So let me draw, and these are all solid lines because they can equal. So 100 on the X and 100 on the Y. And again, usually it's a good idea to label that. So that's X plus Y equals 100. Test 0, 0. Is 0 plus 0 greater than 100? That is a no. So when I cut this into A and B, right? 0, 0, the way I wrote it is A is on the 0, 0 side, but that's a no. So I'm in the B side. So I'm going to cross that off. So now my arrows are in this triangle at the top of that. Okay, the next one is what? 150 on the Y. So put a dot at 150 on the Y. 75 on the X. I'm going to draw that, guys. So 150 on the Y, 75 is right there. And it's going to cut a corner off my region. So I'm going to call the little corner A and B. I'm going to test 0, 0. Is 0 plus 0 greater than 300? So that's a no. So the 0, 0 side is a no, which means my A is no. So my B is a yes. So I'm going to shade in my B, and I'm going to emphasize my corner points. Okay, I'm going to go do that quick. Okay, I need to make that bigger. There we go. I have my corner points that I read off my graph. The other points are just to graph. I went ahead and put them in my chart, subbed them into 12x plus 10y, and I noticed that 1100 is the minimum. So my answer, would be the minimum cost of 1100 by shipping 50 from warehouse A and 50 from warehouse B. Now, if you have a hard time getting the corner points from your graph, if it's not very good, You could, I don't want that, I want Desmos graphing. You could get Desmos graphing, and if you know where you're at, you can click to get those corner points. Another option is to do RREF if you write the names of the lines. All right, let's see. Let me show you this again quick. So for example, like if I don't know where these two lines cross, do you see how I could do RREF with the names of those two lines and it'll spit out the 50-50. All right, so again, after you get the corner points, make your lovely chart, sub in your X, sub in your Y into your Z, look for your either min or max, and then answer the question. All right, hopefully that helps. Good luck. We'll work on these more when we are in class.